In 1999, the Ontario Human Rights Commission fined Christian printer Scott Brocky $5,000 for refusing work for the Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives. By 2004, after appeals, his legal fees had grown to $40,000. In 2001, the Prince Edward Island Human Rights Commission forced the Christian couple Dagmar and Arnos Sapika to close their bed and breakfast and pay $1,000 in damages for refusing to allow practicing homosexuals to take rooms in their home. In 2002, the British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal awarded a transsexual woman, previously a man, $7,500 for injury to her dignity and ordered a Vancouver Rape Crisis Center to allow transsexual females to counsel women who are victims of rape. In 2005, the British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal demanded that the Knights of Columbus pay $1,000 in damages to a lesbian couple for refusing to rent them a hall for their same-sex wedding. In 2005, the Alberta Human Rights Tribunal processed 2 complaints against Calgary Bishop Frederick Henry over the church's teaching on homosexuality that he expressed in a pastoral letter. Fortunately, he had the resources and the public profile to mount an effective defense. Bishop Henry has made several comments on the experience, and I quote, "Human rights laws designed as a shield are now being used as a sword."
But with the actual redefinition of marriage, what we've done is we've taken the focus off from marriage off of the child and focused it on adults. So before 2005, before same-sex marriage came about in Canada, the focus of marriage really was around the child. Marriage was a child-centered institution. Next, we did redefine the family. Of course, with the redefinition of marriage, children went from having one mother and one father to having 2 mothers or 2 fathers. And in 2007, the Ontario Court of Appeal said, you know what, you can have 2 mothers and a father.
It is critical that the people of Minnesota understand that if same-sex marriage is legalized, the new law will require the public schools to change the curriculum to align with this new definition of marriage and the related sexual alternative content. First of all, schools must implement gay-straight alliance clubs. Clubs that affirm sexual alternative lifestyles and same-sex marriage. Second, we're going to have sexual lifestyle instruction integrated so that it permeates the curriculum, all subject areas from kindergarten to grade 12. In Ontario, GSA clubs are being given special privileges to host assemblies in schools for all of the students. They are the directors of the anti-bullying campaigns in the schools. In, for example, community units, primary students will learn about alternative families, same-sex families. They're going to read books about same-sex families. Okay? In music class, I talked to a teacher. He said, Phil, I was just given a book by my principal of songs about going to gay pride, about my same-sex parents, I have to teach these songs to the students in grades 1, 2, and 3, and I have no choice. In drama class, students will have assignments portraying same-sex and LGBT situations. A parent called and said, Phil, what am I going to do? My 8-year-old in grade 3 just came home and said, Mom, I just married my best friend Jim. The minister came in and said this was okay, and we were told, hey, choose somebody in your class, a friend that you'd like to marry, a same-sex friend, and they had a mock wedding ceremony, and they celebrated with cake and ice cream afterwards. How do you integrate this into math? Math problems will include alternative family situations, but I spoke with a textbook publisher, and he said, Phil, I have to have a disproportionate representation of alternative sexual lifestyles in my curriculum. I said, in my textbooks, or my textbook will not be approved for Circular 14. That's the official list of textbooks that can be used in schools. I said, what's this going to look like in math? He said, well, I'll give you an example. Are you familiar with Pythagorean's theorem? You know, the square on the hypotenuse equals the sum of the squares on the other 2 sides. The practical application of that is a carpenter trying to calculate the length of a rafter. In our textbook, the carpenter must be is a cross-dressing carpenter.
Almost immediately after same-sex marriage was legalized in Canada, I began to learn about changes that were planned for the public school curriculum in my province. What I learned deeply troubled me. school officials embarked almost immediately on a program that they themselves refer to as the unlearning process. The real goal is not to use same-sex marriage as an aid in teaching the 3 R's to young children. Quite the opposite, actually. Instead, the objective becomes using the 3 R's as an aid to teach acceptance of same-sex marriage to young children who are lacking in both spiritual maturity and critical thinking skills. I ask for 2 simple things. Firstly, I ask that I be given advance notice of when my children would be exposed to materials which could conflict with my family's sincerely held Christian beliefs. Secondly, I ask that my children be allowed to abstain from lessons or activities during which these materials would be presented. It is important to note that I requested accommodation not merely because indoctrination might offend my children's spiritual sensitivities. In my faith, indoctrination is considered to be a form of false teaching. Abstaining from false teachings is an absolute requirement of my Christian faith. This religious practice, since it is an absolute requirement, is for the purpose of religious accommodation analogous to Muslims abstaining from gym class or music. My request for religious accommodation was denied. All I was trying to do was protect my children from indoctrination. My religious beliefs seemed so benign and non-threatening, especially compared to some of the beliefs that were already being accommodated. In my mind, my legal challenge is fundamentally about discrimination. I am only asking for what is freely being given to members of other faiths. In Canada, the redefinition of marriage has been associated with the complete loss of parental rights in the school system. Indeed, the training document given to teachers to aid in the implementation of the new curriculum denies the very existence of parental rights. Prior to the legalization of same-sex marriage, keeping parents abreast of what was being taught was the standard of practice in the teaching profession. If my child was not good at math and I wanted to know when they were going to be teaching algebra so that I could get a tutor for my kid, a teacher would never refuse to tell me when they were going to teach a subject. In fact, a teacher that refuses would be fired. However, when I want to know when my children will be learning about same-sex marriage, it's none of my business. Do the people of Minnesota want to live in a state where you have to go to court to find out what your children are learning? This is not hyperbole. This incursion on parental rights is typical in jurisdictions where marriage is redefined.